The old freighter, the Rust Runner, groaned with every uneven thrust from its ancient engines. Weeks confined with the same sweat-stained faces, the air thick with stale food and unwashed bodies. I hated these supply runs, and I hated Jarek Ohara most of all. "Think this is it, Captain?" O'Hara rumbled, his voice less a collection of words and more a gravelly landslide. He thought his bulk meant he was in charge. I forced a smile. "We'll see. Better keep your eyes on the scanners. Wouldn't want to miss it again." O'Hara's snarl was my best reward. The asteroid belt surrounding Proxima was a damned graveyard. Hulks of ships, older than the colony itself, littered the region. We weren't here for their scrap. Our target was older still, mythical, the Sentinel. Vanished nearly 3 centuries ago, supposedly crammed with tech for a king's ransom. Or it was just a ghost story, and we were chasing shadows for a drunk's promise. Another jolt rattled my teeth, throwing sparks from Finnley Davis's nav seat. "Captain," Finnley whined, the youngest among us, "you sure these readings are right?" "They're right," I grunted, peering at the screen. The blip was undeniable, and far deeper in the belt than anyone usually dared to go. "Prepare for deceleration. Let's hope the old girl holds together out here." Hours later, it loomed before us. No graceful curves, no gleaming metal like modern ships. It was a massive metal cylinder, pitted and scarred, drifting lazily as if the universe itself had forgotten it existed. "Well, damn me," Ohara said, a rare moment where he wasn't trying to undermine me. "It's real." I didn't answer. For all the legends, I hadn't truly believed it existed either. And now, the sight of it set off a disquiet I couldn't name. "Boarding party prep," I ordered, my voice sharper than I felt. Inside, my gut was a knot, but a captain didn't show it. "Not out here," O'Hara grumbled, hauling his bulk towards the equipment locker. Finnley, already fumbling with his comms. We suited up, the rough clanking of aged armor a poor substitute for the colony's newer, better gear. I checked my mag rifle, the familiar weight, a small comfort, then my cutting tools. Nothing was new, nothing was clean. Everything smelled of rust, recycled sweat, and desperation. Breaching the Sentinel wasn't flashy. A hiss, a groan of stressed metal from the ancient airlock, and then it opened. The first thing that hit us was the smell. A thick, cloying stench of truly old air, like a tomb opened after centuries. Finnley's voice was a tight whisper in my comm. "Smells like death." Ohara, ever the brute, snorted. "Smells like money, boy." He wasn't wrong, not entirely. A single tremor coursed through the ship. Then silence again, deeper and more profound than before. If there were systems still running, we couldn't hear them over the frantic pounding of our own blood. I led them deeper, past bulkheads bearing archaic markings we couldn't decipher, corridors lit only by the pitiful glow of our suit lamps. The vastness of it pressed down, a crushing weight upon us. It felt less like a ship and more like a swallowed void, an endless maw. The silence wasn't empty. It felt occupied, heavy with unspoken things. "Think there'll be bodies?" Finnley's voice was barely audible over the comms, a pathetic squeak of fear. "Shut it, boy!" O'Hara snapped, taking point with his massive form. His bullishness was a mask, I realized, for the same unease that was now coiling in my own stomach. We were tomb raiders, not archaeologists. We had no business here. Then O'Hara stopped short. "Something up there," he grunted. My lamp followed his. At first, nothing but dust and dim metal. Then, a subtle ripple, just beyond our light. The emptiness wasn't empty anymore. Something was watching us. "Weapons on!" I barked, my voice sharp enough to cut through the mounting terror. Finnley yelped, his light beam wobbling like a drunk's aim. Fear did that to you. Made even veterans sloppy. "Easy, Captain." O'Hara's voice was surprisingly level, his bulky mag rifle humming into readiness. "Don't want to be spookin' shadows." "This ain't a shadow," I snapped, my own fear fueling irritation. I shifted my weight, combat reflexes kicking in despite the decades of rust, my eyes straining against the gloom, seeking the source of that ripple. Nothing. Just the same damn dust-choked corridor. Maybe it was a rat? Finnley's voice was a pitiful squeak. He needed toughening up, that one. "Out here, weakness got you killed," Ohara snorted. Rats don't send shivers down a man's spine. He was right. We were experienced spacers, not the type to jump at every creak of an old ship. This was different. The air itself seemed to hum with an unspoken promise of dread. You feel it too, then? I challenged, my voice low. Ohara's silence was admission enough. It coiled in my gut, a primal alarm bell ringing, warning of something ancient, something that had no business being in our universe. We move on, I decided, my tone brooking no argument. Stay sharp, stay together. Whatever this is, it won't catch us off guard. The words felt hollow even as I said them. Confidence was a good weapon in our line of work. But right now, it felt about as solid as stardust. The Sentinel's interior was a maze, twisting and turning with no logic we could discern. Each corridor seemed longer than the last, the silence stretching nerves taut. I fought the urge to glance back every few paces, the primal part of my brain convinced that the moment we looked away, something horrible would manifest from the darkness. Twice more, that ripple disturbed the air. No shape, no sound, just the sensation of a malign presence brushing against the very edge of our perception. Finnley was trembling, mumbling under his breath. Prayers, I suspect. Maybe curses. Hard to tell when a man's teetering on the edge of hysteria. And then, at last, something tangible. Life signs! Finnley's shout was shrill with relief, quickly turning to a strangled gasp. Captain! Up there on the bulkhead! A cluster of marks appeared and vanished against the dusty metal wall. Their rhythm was disturbing and irregular. Organic. Alien. And utterly at odds with everything we thought we knew about this ship. Record it, boy, I ordered, forcing calm into my voice. Analysis team back on the colony might make sense of this. Ohara shifted closer, massive rifle trained on the anomaly. You ever seen anything like this, Captain? Hell no, the admission weighed upon me. Fear ripped through my guts, but a veteran spacer also understood something was seriously wrong out here. The glowing marks became more frequent, not just appearing, but branching now. Spiderwebbing across the walls and ceilings like diseased veins. The ship felt less like a derelict and more like an organism succumbing to a virulent illness. My headache, a dull throb since we'd boarded, escalated into a white-hot spike behind my eyes, each pulse a hammer blow against my skull. The air, already thick with the stench of decay, seemed to press in, making every breath an effort. Suddenly, Jarek Ohara froze. His massive frame, usually so unyielding, locked in place. He swung his mag rifle wildly, the heavy weapon humming, then shouted, "There!" My own lamp followed his frantic sweep. At first, I saw nothing but the same dust-choked metal. Then a fleeting distortion, a hulking shadow, misshapen and too large, flitted across an intersection ahead, then was gone, swallowed by the endless gloom. "Ohara, what the hell did you see?" My voice rose, the strain on my control finally showing. His face was pale, the bravado deserting him entirely. I don't know, Captain. Big, too damn fast. We were losing it. Fear was turning us into the scared animals we'd mocked Finnley for being. I took a deep, steadying breath, trying to claw back some semblance of command. This wasn't us. Time to regroup, get our heads straight. Fall back, we'll establish a perimeter. I started, but the words died in my throat. Finnley's scream tore out of his comms, shrill and raw. It didn't stop. It rose in a crescendo of pure terror, filling our archaic headsets, rattling our teeth. Finnley's frantic shouts cut through the agony, a disjointed torrent of panic. "Grabbed me, something, in the dark!" We reacted instinctively. Ohara dropped into a firing stance, sweeping the corridor with his rifle while I charged forward, my own weapon raised. The fear that had been coiled tight inside me now snapped, replaced by a rush of adrenaline and the primal urge to do something. "Finnley!" I roared into the comms, fear lacing my voice. "Where are you? Answer me, damn it!" Only static answered. Static and the remnants of that horrible scream, fading like an obscene whisper. I rounded a bend and skidded to a halt. There, on the ground, lay Finnley's helmet, its lamp shattered. No other sign of him. He's gone. O'Hara's voice was rough, the bluster finally knocked out of him. "Then we go after him," I growled. My own words felt hollow, reckless. Going on was a special kind of madness. But leaving a man behind, dead or not, that was worse. The corridors seemed to stretch into infinity, twisting and turning, with no logic we could discern. Each pathway felt longer than the last, the silence stretching nerves taut, making us feel utterly trapped and overwhelmed. Jaws moved with a grim determination, but his usual bullish stride was subdued. His massive bulk, which once filled a hallway, now seemed smaller, diminished in the face of the Sentinel's oppressive emptiness. "Find him," I muttered under my breath. It was a plea, maybe to whatever spirits lingered on this damn ship, maybe an order to myself. Because even as I pressed onward, I knew our chances were slim. Something was hunting us, and I was starting to suspect we were hopelessly outmatched. Every twist of the labyrinth brought new horrors. Finnley's shattered helmet had been the first. Now, we found his mag rifle, abandoned mid-corridor, lying like a forgotten toy. But it wasn't the rifle that froze us. Leading away from it, a trail of glowing footprints shimmered against the dusty metal. Footprints that weren't human. Jaws swore, a guttural sound that rattled his massive frame. His hand, usually steady as a rock, shook as he pointed. "What the hell is happening, Captain?" I didn't have an answer. Didn't even have a comforting lie. And for the first time, I considered the possibility that we had found something far worse than old tech out here. We sprinted down corridors we could have sworn we'd passed before, the interior of the Sentinel twisting into an insane maze. And then, a new sound. A wet hiss-like breath forced through some inhuman orifice, closer than before, almost resonating in my chest. A new stench followed, acrid and chemical, burning my nostrils, something alien and corrosive. I skidded to a halt, holding up a fist. Jaws nearly crashed into me, but we shared a look, rife with pure, unadulterated dread. No words needed. Every instinct screamed at us to run. "What about Sparks?" Jaws' whisper barely carried over the thrumming in my own ears. Duty and survival waged war inside me. Duty. That hollow word we hid behind when it meant putting good men in the ground. My gaze swept the darkness, imagining Finnley. Trapped, wounded. Those inhuman footsteps growing closer. He's gone. I choked out, and a part of me shattered with the words, "We head for the airlock now." Jaws nodded, silent, and we turned. Not retreat, I told myself, just a tactical repositioning. And maybe in that moment, I finally understood that the legends about the Sentinel were more than drunken stories. There were worse things than death out here. The dash for the airlock was a chaotic scramble of pounding footsteps and labored breaths. Ohara and I, seasoned in 100 dangerous situations, were reduced to terrified animals, instinct taking over where reason had failed. Every muscle screamed, every gasp for air burned, but the thought of whatever chased us fueled a desperate, primal drive to just move. Behind us, the hiss intensified, mixed now with the occasional, heavy thump that sent vibrations through the ship's ancient hull. I risked a glance over my shoulder, my suit lamp beam cutting through the gloom. The corridor seemed to warp and stretch, walls bathed in a strange, faintly glowing substance that pulsed with a sickening rhythm. Within that substance, I thought I saw a distorted, hulking shape, indistinct, but unmistakably gaining on us. "Faster!" I screamed at Ohara, though the word was swallowed by my own ragged breathing, my steps faltering under the weight of a primal dread I couldn't name. The airlock was finally in sight, a distant promise of escape, but reaching it felt like charging through a nightmare. Each junction, each darkened alcove, held the promise of an ambush. I expected something to leap at us from the darkness, to feel the burn of alien weapons searing my flesh, or the crushing grip that had claimed Finn. My senses were hyper-alert, every shadow a potential threat, every creak of metal a phantom monster closing in. Then, with a blessed hiss, the airlock opened at last. We stumbled inside, chests heaving, hearts pounding violently in our ears. I fumbled for the ceiling controls, my clumsy fingers refusing to operate smoothly. Ohara, typically so decisive, just leaned against the bulkhead, panting, his eyes wide with a fear that mirrored my own. "Did we lose it?" he gasped, his voice raw. I couldn't answer. Every nerve felt raw. Every shadow on the viewports looked like a lurking threat. My breath still hitched in my throat, but my mind, a frantic replaying loop of Finnley's screams and Ohara's pale face, snapped into something resembling focus. We had to warn them. The colony. Whatever the Sentinel housed, whatever insidious presence had claimed Finnley and nearly claimed us, it was dangerous. Potent beyond our comprehension. A science team, maybe, with better equipment. Or military. I didn't know what was needed, only that we couldn't face that alone. "Systems check," I forced out, my voice raw and distant even to my own ears. "Prepare for emergency launch. I need this rust bucket off that ship." Ohara, typically so decisive, moved with surprising alacrity, lumbering to his console. He worked, his brow furrowed, while I let myself slump against the cool metal, exhaustion rolling over me in waves. "Systems are weird, Captain." Ohara's deep voice cut through my thoughts. "Readings are off the charts. Power distribution isn't making sense. Like something's interfering with the—" He trailed off, his voice suddenly tight. I felt the ship shudder then, not the usual thrum of our ancient engines, but a grinding throb that rattled through the very core of the Rust Runner. My head snapped up. "Ohara! Report!" I snapped, scrambling to my feet once more. Ohara's eyes were wide, fixed on the viewports. "The ship. It's moving. Not us, I mean. The whole damn Sentinel is moving." I stared. The colossal cylinder of the Sentinel, pitted and scarred, drifted sluggishly against the field of stars, as though roused from its centuries-long slumber. With that movement, a new horror dawned on me. Colder and more insidious than anything we'd faced. The ship wasn't a derelict. It was alive. The sight of that ancient behemoth stirring to life was a punch to the gut that stole my breath. My mind fumbled for logic, for any explanation other than the horrifying reality. "Systems malfunction," I said. Even to my own ears the words were flimsy, a pathetic attempt to impose order on the chaos unfolding around us. "Systems are fried, Captain," Ohara confirmed, worry lacing the bluster out of his usually thunderous voice. "The Sentinel, it's got power flowing through it, but it ain't coming from us, and it ain't making any damn sense. We need to cut ourselves loose." I forced the words out, my heart a cold lump in my chest. Every instinct told me disconnecting from the ship would be suicide, but staying meant becoming a part of whatever alien process had just begun. I stumbled back to my own console, hands shaking as I tried to override the docking clamps. Alarms blared, warnings flashing across the screen. The Rust Runner was too deeply entwined now, the ship's systems bound by whatever power surged through the alien vessel. "Can't cut it, Captain. I can't," Ohara yelled, a tremor in his words. He was the brute force of our trio, the one who kicked down doors and wrenched stubborn machinery into compliance. His helplessness was chilling. The Sentinel shifted again, its movements slow but inexorable. We weren't just docked anymore. We were part of its body, being carried along as it roused itself from whatever unfathomable sleep it had endured for centuries. The Sentinel shifted again, a movement so slow yet so inexorable it felt like the turning of a cosmic gear. My breath hitched. It wasn't waking up. That was too simple, too human a concept. It had never been asleep. It had been waiting. A predator, patient beyond comprehension, stirring only when its prey, us, had delivered ourselves into its maw. The chilling realization settled in my gut, a colder, deeper dread than any physical monster could conjure. My gaze swept from the viewport, now showing only the black expanse into which we were being dragged, to Ohara's pale, sweat-slicked face. A whisper escaped me, barely audible over the Rust Runner's futile thrumming. What did we bring back with us when we touched those things? Ohara's eyes, wide with a fear I now understood completely, locked onto mine. Comprehension, dawning like a poisoned sunrise, washed over his features. His big frame started to tremble, an uncontrollable shiver. "It's in us," he rasped, his voice raw, We're hooked, just like this bucket of bolts. The horror was no longer out there. It was inside us. A parasitic connection we'd forged with an entity beyond our understanding. We weren't on a salvage run anymore. We were passengers on a cosmic horror story, caught in the machinery of something so vast, so alien, it defied comprehension. The Sentinel's movement took on a strange, deliberate quality, a purpose that was utterly inscrutable. We drifted away from the familiar asteroid cluster, the comforting patterns of constellations blurring into an indifferent void. Where the hell was it taking us? What grotesque destination awaited? Silence was our only answer, a void as terrifying as the starless expanse outside. The Rust Runner, my home, my command, was now just cargo in that titanic hull, a small, insignificant speck. A grim sort of humor bubbled up then, dark and bitter. It took a relic older than the colony itself, a ship from an age of gods and ancient powers, to finally break me. A seasoned spacer, with a lifetime of near-death scrapes under my belt, brought down by something I couldn't even fight. I managed a dry grin, a desperate rictus at Ohara. "Well," I said, the words tasting like ash, "at least we won't die wondering what was on this damned ship." O'Hara's response was a choked laugh, devoid of its usual bravado, a sound more mournful than mirthful. We'd survived the belt, the dangers of derelict salvage, countless close calls, only to be brought down by an opponent we couldn't see, couldn't fight, couldn't even comprehend. The dark irony of it all was almost enough to make a man scream, a sound I kept locked tight behind my teeth. Time lost all meaning out here. Hours melted into days, then into an indistinguishable sludge of endless dark, and the Rust Runner's shuddering thrum. The rhythms of shipboard life, eat, sleep, check the failing systems, became a pathetic mockery of control. Ohara and I fell into a strange, uneasy coexistence. The gruff camaraderie was gone, replaced by a shared dread that settled upon us like a shroud. We spoke little, ate less, the stale ship rations twisting in our stomachs. I watched as that big man slowly shrank inwards, the bluster stripped away to reveal a fearful core, not so different from my own. The Rust Runner itself was transformed. It wasn't just the systems fluctuating wildly, or the constant tremor that throbbed through the corridors. The walls glowed with a faint, sickly light, the once clean metal seeming to warp and flow in the periphery of vision, like a membrane stretching taut. Every shadow seemed deeper, more alive. Nightmares plagued what little sleep I could snatch, haunted by visions of those glowing marks, the diseased veins spreading, and the eerie, inhuman sound that pursued us on that first ill-fated day. The ship was no longer just our vessel. It felt like an extension of the Sentinel, its own flesh beginning to rot. "We should try again," Ohara mumbled one cycle, his voice hoarse and cracking. He'd taken to staring into the depths of the airlock, as if he could will an escape hatch into existence. I didn't ask try what, I knew. Going back. He forced the words out, his eyes hollow. "Find whatever infected this damn ship. Make it let go." It was madness, of course. Yet my old recklessness stirred in the face of his hopeless plan. Maybe it was better than sitting here, waiting for the inevitable, letting whatever was inside us change us into something else. It was better than this slow, creeping death. Sleep evaded me that cycle. Instead, I replayed the horrors we'd witnessed aboard the Sentinel. Finnley's vanishing act, the alien markings, the terrifying shape in the darkness. It formed a mosaic of madness, each element feeding into a terrifying possibility. I got up and went to the equipment locker. We'd only salvaged a fraction of the Sentinel's interior, but it was enough. When I approached Ohara, my old mag rifle clutched in trembling hands, he just nodded. Acceptance, replacing despair. I'd hoped for a fight, for him to offer some scrap of cautious logic, but it seemed that logic had long since abandoned us both. The airlock hissed open, a final, chilling invitation. The airlock hissed open, a sound that should have been relief, but felt like a final, damning invitation. I hesitated, a primal instinct screaming at me to turn back, but then Finnley's shrieks echoed in my memory, a ghost in my comms, and I steeled myself. Re-entering the Sentinel was like plunging into a living nightmare, every sense assaulted. The glow from the walls was brighter now, pulsating with an unnatural rhythm, and the air, God, the air. It reeked of something ancient and foul, a pervasive stench as if the ship itself was rotting from the inside out. The corridor stretched before us, but it was no longer the metal tunnel we'd fled. It throbbed, the pathways branching and twisting like the diseased veins of some colossal alien organism. Each step felt like a surrender, drawing us deeper into its grotesque anatomy. Where to? Ohara grunted, his voice a ragged whisper, his bravado finally completely gone. My rifle trembled in my sweaty hands, but my eyes were fixed on the pulsing pathways. I don't know, I forced out, but something's calling us. It wasn't a sound or a voice, but a deep, nauseating pull, a thrumming in my skull that dragged us inexorably toward what I could only assume was the beating heart of this damned living ship. The stench grew thicker, the air itself heavy and cloying. We pushed on, the compulsion undeniable until we reached it. Not a chamber, not a room, but an absence, a void in the very substance of the ship, a cancerous darkness that throbbed just beyond the glowing walls. It seemed to absorb the light from our suit lamps, deepening and spreading as we watched. "Captain," Ohara whispered, his voice holding a child's terror. My morbid curiosity warred with the screaming instincts that warned me this was the point of no return. I felt a strange, insidious pull, an urge to step into that obscene hollow, to let it claim me. Then it rippled. From the blackness, a shape extruded, smooth and sinuous where the rest of the ship was pitted and scarred. It was less a form and more a suggestion, ever-shifting, impossible to fully perceive. My mind fumbled, trying to anchor it to something recognizable, but failed. "Oh, God," Ohara whimpered, his massive rifle shaking in his hands. "What is that?" No answer came, only that persistent, sickening pull. Ohara screamed then. A raw, animalistic cry. He lunged forward, rifle firing blindly at the encroaching darkness. But the mag rounds were pebbles against the growing shadow. It flowed over him, smothering him in impossible darkness. His screams cut off abruptly, replaced by a hiss-like air forced through a punctured lung. His form writhed, shifting, dissolving into the black mass, and then he was gone. Ohara was reborn within it. His features, once so bullish and familiar, warped and melted into a travesty, his eyes now glowing orbs fixed on me with a hateful intensity that chilled my soul. I backed away, legs refusing to obey the primal urge to flee. A wrongness churned in my core, something twisting free inside of me. This wasn't just death, it was absorption. A final shred of defiance flared, a spark in the encroaching abyss. I raised my rifle, the cold barrel pressed against my own temple, and I pulled the trigger. Darkness. That's what should have come. Oblivion. Instead, there was another jolt, a disorienting lurch back into being. My first breath was a gasp, then the stink of old air, the groaning rumble of an ancient engine straining against the impossible. I was on the Rust Runner. Impossible, and yet I knew it in my bones. "Think this is it, Captain," Ohara bellowed beside me. His voice, that gruff rumble, the way he spat out, "Captain." It was all so terribly familiar. My head throbbed. I fumbled for the helmet release, desperate for the cool rush of recycled air. When it came free, my hands were shaking. "We'll see," I heard myself say, and the wrongness of it struck me. My voice, my words. But my will? Confusion turned to ice-cold horror. Another tremor coursed through the ship, and then Ohara stopped, peering down the corridor leading to the Sentinel. "Something up there," he grunted. His voice was eerily familiar. It was me, and I was watching myself. I was trapped, a prisoner in my own damn body as it replayed the same doomed sequence. My body moved. My lips spoke words burned into a horrific memory I couldn't change. Then came Finnley's scream, Ohara charging, and my body, no, not mine anymore, following. Each beat of this play unfolded, a constant torment as I rode this flesh puppet, unable to stop it. I died in that corridor, only to wake again on the rust runner, the cycle restarting, my sanity dangled by a thread. This was worse than death. I was doomed to relive my failure infinitely, an insignificant mote trapped in an alien machinery beyond my comprehension. Ohara too, and maybe Finnley, all ensnared in this loop, this cruel form of existence. As the sickening pattern began to repeat again, I wanted to scream, but the voice wasn't mine to control. I wanted to cry, but the tears weren't mine to shed. I wanted to die, but I already was, in the worst way imaginable. I saw my body grab a mag rifle, preparing once more to charge into the ship's decaying hull. I wanted to fight, to defy, to take back some shred of control, but I knew now that control was an illusion. The routine would play again and again. My defiance, my hope, even my fear, all part of the script, written in my flesh and bone, warped by an alien logic. And with that horrifying realization came a bitter acceptance. I was a part of the Sentinel now, and there was nothing to do but endure.